Kelly, and I wanted to show you today some cedar bark that I've stripped for a cedar Ojibwe longhouse. So in Michigan, in the Upper Peninsula, the Ojibwe people lived in quite a high concentration in a place called St. Ignace, Michigan, and that's because they actually were birch bark canoe builders, and they helped support the voyageurs from the French fur trade in the 16, 17, 1800s. And so they lived communally in longhouses. So in a lot of places, Native Americans and Native Alaskans were living in longhouses. Well, here in Michigan and the Great Lakes region, they would use cedar bark to cover their longhouses. And they sometimes would be about up to 100 feet long. And they would have maybe up to 40 people or so, or even larger amounts, living communally in a longhouse. So I'm going to show you now how to strip some cedar bark. So I'm actually stripping this bark to help recover the longhouse in St. Ignace, Michigan. So it's actually pretty easy here. See if I can do it. I'm left-handed, so this might be a little bit of a challenge. So I'm just taking it, and it's rained recently, so I'm just going to drive a screwdriver in. I've never tried to do this one-handed, so this might be a little bit of a challenge here. It's much easier when I can use both hands. So what I'm trying to do is peel underneath this bark. There we go. So once I get a good peel going on, you just work this down. Your goal is to try not to break it, because you want it to be one uniform piece if possible. You just kind of work it slowly. So hopefully you can see this. So I've got it quite a ways down here. And around knots it can be a little challenging. Okay. Okay, all the way to the end here. Okay, that part's done. So now, it's so much harder one-handed here. So I'm going to take my screwdriver, kind of pry up around all of these knots. And so I made a wigwam, which is bigger than a wickiup, and a whole family could live in a wigwam. And it could be mobile and moved easily. Longhouses are typically more stationary and permanent dwellings. But wigwams and wickiups, they can be made very easily, especially a wickiup. Wigwam is kind of more probably seasonal, sometimes semi-permanent dwelling, and can be made out of birch bark or cedar bark. This is northern white cedar here. And Michigan is full of sustainable logging practices. It's probably one of the best models in the United States for sustainable logging, in my opinion. And there's a lot of cedar swamps here. So I've got this started. And basically, I think what I'll do is I'll turn off the camera and keep going. And then come back and show you what it looks like a little bit later in a few minutes, so I can upload this. So there's your first video on removing cedar bark.